Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Ramblings of an Old Fart. My name's Craig Warren. I'm 71 years old, and I've been married about almost 53 years. Father of 9 and grandpa to a bunch. I'm sort of retired. I retired at 65 to provide full-time care for my wife, who's had some serious health issues. But lately, I realized that I needed something to do to keep my mind active, so why not a podcast? I have a lot of experience. I've done a lot of different things in my 50-some years in the workforce. But, I have a lot of opinions, too. And so what else would I need? I should mention that I've never been a member of a political party, and I do not intend to do so. My podcasts do not come from a political place, just from a factual and common sense place. I was listening over the weekend to some different things and checking some articles and reading some things for some research. I come across a story that really caught my attention. The last little while we've been inundated with so much garbage in politics and the Iran war, and we've had a lot of stuff here where we're getting some big business wants to put in a data center, and there's a lot of issues over that, and I kind of got tired of it all. But this story kind of reminded me of the way it should be, and I want to go over some of that with you. I entitled this podcast, "Maybe Honor and Integrity Aren't Dead After All." So let's get into this. I'll go through it with you and see what you think. It was unreal. When he sold his business, this founder shared $240 million with his 500 employees to thank them for their loyalty. There's an article I seen in the Wall Street Journal, I believe. Here's the thing. Many business owners who sell their companies for a huge sum of money just happily walk away and enjoy their billions, off in some secluded island or whatever. But Graham Walker chose to do a different path. The majority owner of a family-run Minden, Louisiana business based out of Louisiana. It's Fiberbond. He sold his company earlier this year for $1.7 billion. To thank the longtime workers, he earmarked $240 million of that for bonuses, which resulted in life-changing cash infusions for 540 full-time employees. On average, the Wall Street Journal says that the employees raised an average of $443,000. Workers, of course, that had been there a long time received much more. That money will be paid out over a 5-year period as long as the employees stay working with the company. Of course, the new owners wanted to keep the people there because the company had done real well, so they knew they had good employees. The exception there, of course, if anybody is 65 or older, they can just retire if they want immediately and retain the full bonus. You have to run. This is kind of a special thing because this isn't one of those companies where the employees own part of the stock. See, the owner of this company, he didn't have to do any of this, but he just decided he needed to. Those were the people that helped build the business. And they'd been through all kinds of problems. They'd had issues in the past with the economy and fire and all kinds of different things, but they all stuck it out with the company. So I thought that was kind of, when I was looking, that was one of the things I was looking for. Let's look for some good news for a change instead of all this other stuff. And so I wanted to focus on people that, did things like this, and businesses especially that weren't looking for just a tax write-off. They were there because they truly cared for the employees. So my next thought was, are there more of these out there? How many of these kind of things can I find to kind of establish, some more confidence in our society? This idea of integrity and honor and you know what I mean? So I did some looking, and I did find some more. Some of them were quite interesting, and I wanted to share those with you today. Just maybe I can brighten your day up a little bit, too. In 2016, we have a fellow named Hamdi Ulukaya. I think is how you pronounce it. And he was the founder of the Chobani Yogurt Company. He surprised 2,000 of his employees by giving them a 10% stake in the company when it went public or was sold. Hilkiah was an immigrant who started the company with a small loan. He stated that the wealth shouldn't just stay at the top. That was his idea. For some long-term workers, the shares were estimated to be worth over $1 million. He didn't have to do it. He simply believed that the people who built this company, his company, should own a piece of it. And then we have Dan Price, the CEO of Gravity Payments, in 2015. He read a study about how emotional and well-being plateaus after a certain income level. So he decided he would slash his $1.1 million a year salary down to $70,000, and then he raised the minimum salary for every other single employee in the company to $70,000 as well. While he faced criticism from other CEOs, the kindness paid off because the business tripled, and the employees were so moved that they all chipped in to buy him a Tesla as a thank you gift. In 2019, we have Edward St. John, the founder of Maryland real estate firm. He handed out red envelopes at a company holiday party. Inside were bonuses totaling $10 million, divided among 198 employees. Those bonuses went anywhere from $50,000 to $250,000, depending on how long they've been with the company. Videos of the event showed the employees crying and hugging each other. Most said it meant that they could finally pay off their mortgages or send their kids to college debt-free. Just recently here in May of 2024, it was reported that the employees of it says Cool T Systems. It's a data center cooling company, and they received a life-changing bonus following a $4.75 billion buyout. Through an employees' ownership program championed by the investment company, this KKR, even non-executive staff received bonuses averaging about 8 times their annual salary. The leadership's philosophy was that ownership isn't just for the board of directors. It's the most effective way to build a culture when everyone feels the win. And why do these stand out so much? What makes them different from corporate, is the corporate social responsibility thing, which isn't really, it doesn't exist in most companies. It's mostly just a marketing thing. But this has a direct impact on the individuals' lives that work for the companies. In the fiber bond case that we talked about just a minute ago, one employee, Alicia Key, who started at $5.35 an hour with the company. She used her bonus to pay off her mortgage 12 years early and to fulfill her dream of opening a clothing boutique. That's kind of life-changing things that meant for some of those people. I wondered how many of others here, there maybe not necessarily these great big corporations where it's not, $250,000 or $300,000 bonuses or something. And I did find a few that I found very interesting. While many companies have a training budget, Bridgeway Capital Management, an investment firm out of Houston, took a more personal approach. They established a program where employees could apply for extraordinary experience grants. Instead of just paying for a coding seminar or some other education like that, they funded personal dreams, like an employee who wanted to take their elderly parents back to their home country for one last visit, or another who wanted to learn a specialized craft that had nothing to do with finance, just something they'd always wanted to learn how to do. It acknowledges that an employee is a person with a life outside of the office, not just a resource, right? And this is one of them. It's probably something you may have heard for, because it's not like a business thing. Business workplace. In 2021, a high school custodian named Chris Jackson was struggling with kidney failure. His supervisor, the principal, didn't just offer him extra sick leave. She underwent testing and was able to donate her own kidney for him. This is not the kind of tax write-off thing or a PR strategy or something like that. It was just a life-saving sacrifice between two people who worked together every day. In the 1990s, a small printing business owner found out that one of his long-term press operators was losing his eyesight and would no longer be able to perform his trade. But instead of letting him go or putting him on a disability, the owner spent months researching and eventually restructured the entire warehouse and the workflow so the employee could transition into a logistics role that relied on touch and memory rather than eyesight. It allowed the man to keep his paycheck and his pride and his daily routine until he was ready to retire on his own terms. We have several things. I've read several of them during the COVID pandemic, but this is one I found quite interesting. Several small business owners across the country did something unusual with their extra cash or federal relief money. Instead of upgrading equipment or putting it in their pocket, they contacted companies like this RIP Medical. Because medical debt can be bought usually for pennies on the dollar, a small $15,000 donation could buy almost $1.5 million in medical debt for the people in their zip code. It wasn't just for their employees, it was for their town where they live. This wasn't a bonus, like I said, for their own stuff, their own staff, their own people, but a quiet act to lift the crushing weight of healthcare costs off of their neighbors without even ever asking or seeking a thank you. And we have one here, Peter Limmer and Sons. They're out of New Hampshire. They were a legendary custom boot maker called Peter Limmer and Sons. They'd been handcrafting boots for over a century. When it came time for the Limmer family to retire, they didn't sell to a big conglomerate that would automate the process and, start making cheaper boots. And they don't want them to fire the people either. So they intentionally transitioned the business to a long-time apprentice and an employee to ensure that the craft stayed alive and the local workers kept their jobs. It was a refusal, basically, to just cash out at the expense of the community and the tradition and their workers. They could have just took the cash and ran, but they decided not to. I want to make a little bit of some comparisons between some of these and some of the other things on the other extreme that I've seen over the last little while. I want to first compare this fiber bond that we talked about, and then there's another company called Simmons Bedding. So in the fiber bond model we talked about, when the company was sold for $1.7 billion, the owners voluntarily gave $240 million to their employees. They recognized that the wealth was created by the workers, right? So everybody should share a little bit in the deal. But in the Simmons Bedding model, a private equity owners took over. They loaded the company up with $1.3 billion in debt to pay themselves massive dividends, and then they let the company go bankrupt. Of course, everybody was let go. They viewed the company as a lemon to be squeezed dry, leaving 3,000 workers with uncertain futures while the owners walked away with millions in their pockets. Then we have this Malden Mills is another one that I've seen. And then we have this Enron Corporation. After a factory fire in 1995, the CEO of this Malden Mills, this Aaron Fahrenstein, continued to pay the salaries of all 3,000 workers for months while the plant was rebuilt. He famously said, "I have a responsibility to the worker. I have a responsibility to the community." So let's contrast that with Enron. As the company collapsed due to fraudulent accounting executives, they'd cashed out about $18 about $1 billion in stock while explicitly telling employees to keep buying. They knew they were going to crash, but they kept it quiet and encouraged employees to keep buying the stock to keep the price up. And then they cashed out and walked away with millions and millions. But see here, the executive prioritized their personal exit strategies while wiping out the life savings and 401ks of about 20,000 employees. And with the Limmer & Sons, let's compare that with the Hostess company, Hostess Twinkies. See, the Limmer & Sons, they chose to hand the business to a dedicated apprentice to preserve the craft and the local jobs rather than selling it to conglomerate for big money. See, they valued the legacy of the work and the stability of the town over the maximum possible sale price. But in the Hostess example, after years of mismanagement, executives awarded themselves 75% raises while simultaneously demanding a 27% cut in the employee pay and benefits. They used the company as a vehicle for short-term executive gain at the expense of the long-term survival of the brand and its workers. That was my whole point of looking at this. There's got to be a bright light, but you can see all of these horrible things going on. It's nice to see a few of them where people still have honor and integrity. That's my whole point of this. These stories share a common thread. The leader of these organizations saw a person, where the system usually just sees a number, right? Or just numbers on a sheet there of some kind. And whether it's a kidney or a restructured warehouse or a trip for a parent, these are acts of civic integrity and on a micro level. It's a powerful word because it is so much more than just honesty. The word integrity is that structural soundness, like a well-built engine or a solid weld, where the inside matches the outside, regardless of who's looking. In the worlds of big business and government, we often see compliance, which is just following the rules because someone is watching. But these stories of kindness are examples of integrity, doing the right thing simply because it is the right thing to do. It's the Washingtonian ideal in action, putting the welfare of the community or of your employees above personal gain or power. When a shop owner or a CEO treats their employees like family rather than line items, they are upholding a silent contract of honor. It's that same grit you see in the trades business, There's no way to fudge. If you're a mechanic or an electrician, you have to actually do the work. And you kind of have to do it right, or, somebody's going to come back and let you know about it. So it's a lot better to do it right up front. And that's where the integrity part comes in. There's an inherent truth in that kind of work, though. It seems to get lost when things move into the abstract world of high finance or partisan politics or, big business mergers, those kind of things. It's kind of easy to get cynical, like I was over the weekend, when the research shows a lack of transparency or fiscal irresponsibility. But these warm and fuzzy examples proved, to me, of course, that the human element hasn't completely been erased. There are still people operating on that old school handshake logic. The most impactful acts of kindness rarely make the evening news. They happen in quiet moments between a shop foreman and an apprentice, or a business owner and a struggling neighbor or an employee. True integrity isn't found in a campaign speech or a corporate mission statement. It's found in the follow-through. It's the handshake that doesn't need a lawyer. The repair done right the first time becomes your name because your name is on it. And the decision to share the spoils with the people who actually did the heavy lifting. In a world that often feels like it's following the money down a dark hole, these individuals are the light. They prove that you can be successful without losing your soul, and that being a tough leader doesn't mean you have to have a cold heart. Integrity is, here's a quote from C.S. Lewis. He said, integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is watching. Here's another quote. It's from Dennis Prager. It says, goodness is about character. Integrity, integrity, honesty, kindness, generosity, moral courage, and the like, more than anything else, is about how we treat other people. So I'm going to leave that with you today. I just wanted to end, do one of these. It's more on a happy note, and hopefully we can watch out for more kind acts like this. Maybe we can even be part of one. So anyway, I'm going to say goodbye today. I want to thank you for joining me. I hope you found it entertaining, or educational, or thought-provoking. Join me next time, won't you? I'm Craig Warren. This has been the Ramblings of an Old Fart Podcast. God bless you and keep you till next time.